Okay, part two. So Liam is asking about the difference between the East Coast, West Coast, um, and that West Coast seems more commercial, and the East Coast seems more like classical and a little avant-garde, and that's true. So continuing with his questions, he says, "What characteristics do you think distinguish each scene from the other?" Well, uh, New York has more technique. There, I said it. Deal with it, Los Angeles. That said, a lot of New York dancers come to LA, and a lot of LA dancers go to New York. So it does cross over now a lot more. New York characteristics. When you're speaking of avant-garde, I don't find commercial work there to be avant-garde. I find company work to be avant-garde. I think Los Angeles doesn't really live in company land. There's a couple, Diavolo, stuff like that. But overall, there's so much bread and butter and money to be made in the commercial world that if you're really going to do the tough and tumble company world of $300 a week and don't eat and suffer all day long, I mean, that's just a different way of living. You know, the people that come to LA for commercial work, they want to get residuals and go on tour with artists and do fancy things and wear cute clothes and tip around their heels and toss their hair and be fabulous and go out to good fun parties. I find if you're in New York, you have to have this incredible, crazy drive and need to dance and need to express yourself and your love for the art. I don't find that LA dancers are living for the art of it, but I find that New York dancers have more of a sense of their art because they suffer for their art. Not to say that LA people don't suffer for their art sometimes, but I think the attention here is generally more on fabulousness and money. And that may seem shallow, but I don't think so. I mean, it depends on what you put behind it. I mean, if you just do it for that, then that's it. I do it for the friends and the fun. Because after a while, when you worked with everybody for so long, you just end up working with your friends, and that's how you get to see your friends and socialize all day long. Did I even answer that question? What characteristics do you think distinguish? I think New Yorkers work a lot harder. I do. You just have to. It's so expensive. Just living is so expensive. Even if you're in a major show, you're barely making enough to get by. In Los Angeles, I think commercial work is just such a godsend because you could do one day of work and it pays you all year long. You know, maybe not so much anymore, but movies and stuff shoot out here. But Toronto and other countries are taking some of our gigs and not going union. That's a little difficult. Here in LA, it's much more cliquey. You have to know these choreographers to even be seen. Like there's so few auditions. There's so rarely stuff going on that you can be seen in that you have to kind of know people ahead of time. So you have to be out in the scene already, like pre-work before your work, pre-audition before your audition. They have to know what you do. They have to know they can trust you. They have to know you can perform before you even get to the audition. At the audition, there's just not enough time to see and really get a sense of what everyone can do, especially if that audition doesn't showcase your particular skills. So you have to show your skills everywhere you can to be seen and get people talking about you. Once people are talking about you, that's how you get in the door. So get people talking about you in a good way. Not complaining about you, talking about you. Was this difference evident when you were starting out back in the day? Yes, it was very evident. But even in Los Angeles, there was a huge divide between technical people and street dancers. Back in the day, there was no hip hop. It was just sort of beginning as an underground thing. The music didn't even really exist. It was rap, but it was just street dance. It wasn't called hip hop. And there was a very specific split between three different camps, and that's why so many of these '80s movies were like, the ballet school meets the street dancers, and they go and they save their school, and they have like a charity benefit, and I'm going to battle you with my ballet, and that's why they had those, because it was the ballet world. It was a completely individual, unique world. The street dancing world was a completely individual, unique world. And the jazz dancers were a completely unique individual world, and never did the three cross. Ballet dancers could occasionally do jazz, but it always looked so lifted and placed, and they couldn't get the funk of the jazz. Jazz, like ballet dancers, could never do street. Street dancers could never do ballet. Like they just didn't train that way. When you're out on the street, dancing, like popping, locking, whacking out on the street, like why is your toe pointed? Nobody cares. So they just never could do it, and they just never trained, and there was no need to, nor necessity, and the worlds never crossed. And when one job that needed a street dancer wasn't using a ballet dancer. Over time, I think I was one of the beginning few who could do all of it. And I think that's probably why I worked so much, but that's also because I only took ballet for 6 months, and then I just started hanging out with street dancers. And I would literally take my boombox out in the street and dance under the street light like a fool in the middle of the parking lot, all by myself in the middle of the night, and just look like an idiot, being all dramatic, and hang out with them, and it trained it out of me. So I was able to keep my technique in a way, but also stay really connected to what my body does, just as on an improvisational level. Next part of this is. We're talking about the differences. Yes, the differences were very, very evident. People that came from New York were very balletic at the time, like ballet and jazz. That's it. There was no street anything that they could do. When they came to LA to do anything with a pop star or a tour, it just got really wrong, often. And that was for years. It stayed that way, and only recently, not recent, but like 10 years, 12 years, has it really sort of stepped up, and there's some really great street people and street dancers coming out of New York, really great styles. All right, next section, part 3 coming up.